consider as sufficient evidence which would lead you to the belief in God?
I mean, like one angel would be enough. I suppose that's quite a thing that always strikes me. You know, God wants to be, or in most of the religions, God wants to be believed in, and He'll even punish you in terrible ways if you don't believe in Him. But He does so little to prove His existence. It would be very easy for God to, you know, we could live in a universe where just like we know there's a sun, we know there's a God.
Okay, so let's try and unravel this a bit. So the very first thing I want to do, Andy, is just to clarify something for us here. Unfortunately, we fall into this way of thinking sometimes as human beings, especially in the 21st century, which is seeing is believing. That seems to be the underlying assumption with what you're saying.
Yeah.
Only if you send me an angel. Right?
Yeah.
Now, this is not something uncommon, right? Even at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, there would be the Meccans, some of the Meccans, they would make such claims or request for such proofs. They say, why don't the angels come down to us, right? But it's very important to understand something here, that physical data, empirical data, is not the only way, based on that, to formulate beliefs or come to truth. Empiricism or science is not the only way to truth. Do you recognize that?
Well, I think I know where you're going. I lean more towards the empiricist line that you can come up with any theory, but if it doesn't correspond with nature, then it's
sure. But what I'm saying, Andy, is that's in the realm of science, and we respect that, right? Muslims love science as well. We don't have a problem with science. If anything, if you look at the Islamic history, the golden age with the development of science, another topic. But what I'm specifically saying is when it comes to life, and the beliefs that we formulate and arrive at, there are many routes to knowledge. That's the key point I'm trying to get across here, Andy. Is that, for example, let me give you an example. Are your parents still alive?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you believe your parents are your parents?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah.
Do you believe that with conviction?
Oh, I mean, yes, but...
You're as certain as you're going to be, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, here's the thing, Andy. Let me ask you this. Have you done a DNA test? No, right? Yeah. Most of us have. Yeah. Majority of humanity hasn't done a DNA test, which has proven that their parents are their parents. The point here is then, therefore, Andy, you have a belief which is not based on empirical data, which is based on something else, right?
Well, I wouldn't say no. I would disagree. So, you know, it's empirically true that they raised me, that their names are on birth certificate.
Them raising you, Andy, doesn't prove that they're your parents.
I mean, obviously. But the evidence, there's two possibilities. One, I was swapped at birth, and they never told me, or the other is they are actually my parents.
Sure.
And just
maybe there's more possibilities.
I look like my parents. All my my brother would have told me.
Andy,
do you know what I mean? I have a mountain of evidence, not proof, but a mountain of actual empirical evidence.
The things you pointed out are not empirical evidences. For example, I look like them. That's not empirical data. For example, some people look more like their aunties and uncles than they do their parents, right? So that's more of a subjective type of analysis. It's not empirical data.
I would kind of disagree with that. And like if my parents were black, you know, I probably would have guessed that I'm not there. Do you know what I mean?
Sure,
that would be a kind of evidence. And
but it's not empirical data. That's more reasoning. For example, empirical data, let me clarify what that is. Empirical data is when you do observations and you have tangible things in front of you which establish or you can utilize to come to a conclusion, right? And formulate a belief, right? Now, when you're looking at your parents and saying, oh, I look somewhat like them, therefore they're my parents, this is more of a type of reasoning. It's more of a pure type of reasoning.
I see where you're going, but
doing.
The deduction itself is based on empiricism. We can observe that children look like their parents,
but I said,
and we can do DNA. You know,
we can. Sure.
So I know that. So empirically, you can show A, and then you can use A to determine that.
But Andy, here's the thing: you
like,
can do a DNA test. You haven't done it yet.
Yes.
Right now, you're saying because I look like them, right? But what I'm saying is, many people look like their aunties and uncles and distant relatives more so than their parents. So that's not really evidence, right?
Well, I would agree. So that's sort of empirical evidence that, you know, going the other way. But I think if you still add it all up, you know, it would be...
What else would you add to that?
Do you know what I mean? The fact that my brother never mentioned that I was adopted. You know,
Okay, good.
Do you know what I mean? We
But
could
that's
get-
testimony now. So you're referring to testimony. It's called authentic and valid. You're referring to authentic and valid testimony of
Yes.
people you trust.
Yeah,
Such
yeah.
as your parents telling you you're their
Yes,
son,
yeah,
your
yeah.
brother telling you that they're your parents.
Yes.
This is more testimony, right? Now here's the thing,
Yes.
Andy. Even in the scope of or the discipline of science,
Yeah.
a lot of science is based on testimony.
Yes,
Right? So
yeah.
for example, what scientists do is they work off the work of previous scientists,
Yeah.
which is going by their testimony. Right?
Yeah.
So testimony is another route to knowledge, right? What I'm trying to get you to
Yes.
appreciate, Andy, that empirical direct observation, seeing
Yes.
is not the only way to come to a conclusion or a belief.
I would definitely agree.
Yeah.
It's not, if you sort of narrowly defined empiricism as just things
How
you
would
can
you define
actually
empirical?
see.
How would you define
I
the empirical
suppose,
method?
Yeah, let me think. If I could think for a minute, I could probably come up with a better answer, but something like just evidence, let me think. Yes, basically, how do we understand the world? We observe things, we get testimony, we can check the testimony. I won't say
What would you
empirically.
check?
Do you know what I mean? How believable it is, how often.
Yeah, so what
do
you're
you know
referring
what I
yeah,
mean?
so
Like
wait, no, but here's the
this-
thing. You're
yeah.
right, I agree with you.
Yeah.
When you're referring to testimony, what you're saying is you're checking the source of the testimony.
Yes.
Is it valid? Is it authentic?
Yes,
It's
yes.
called authentic and valid testimony for a
Yes,
reason, right?
yeah.
I would agree. We agree to this.
Yeah.
But what we would say is that we also have this in our tradition. I'll touch upon this in a
Yes.
bit. But for now, do you at least recognize and appreciate that there's many routes to knowledge other than empirical data?
Yes, I'm not sure. I feel I'm going to say yes.
Okay,
but
let
I
me
might
put it
come
another
back
way.
to it, but,
Do you
know,
believe science?
I mean, it's an interesting point,
Yeah.
and I feel like if I thought about it for half an hour, I'd come back with a better answer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would sort of agree with you that
Yeah.
obviously you have to. I think they call it abduction. You have to look
Induction.
at all the. Well, I think they call it abductions, but yeah, you have to look at a bit of deduction and a bit of evidence and a bit of
Yeah, so
experience.
the way
bit of
science, so here's what I'm trying to get us to appreciate.
Yeah.
The bigger picture,
Yeah.
which is that there are different routes to knowledge.
Yeah,
Empiricism is a great route, a tool that we have. It doesn't lead to absolutes,
yeah.
but it does lead us to understand the physical world around us,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
the best tool we have to study the physical world around us,
Yeah.
right? Now, when it comes to the question of God, God is not a part of the physical world.
Yeah.
He's the creator of the physical world and
Yeah.
everything that exists, right?
Yes.
He is what you would say, the question of God is a metaphysical question. It's beyond the physical, right?
Yes.
Now, that's not to say that there is no proofs or evidences. We can establish that, and I'm going to share some
Yes,
with you. But for
okay.
now, I just want you to appreciate that there are other routes to knowledge. Because once you do that, Andy, then I can give you those other
Okay.
reasons, right?
Okay.
Because if I give you the reasons without getting you to appreciate the first point,
Yeah,
we're not
yeah.
going to go anywhere. Right?
Yes.
So it's
Well,
important to appreciate what I'm
Okay,
saying.
I feel my last couple of answers
Yeah.
weren't very good. They were kind of waffly
Okay.
because I haven't got it straight in my head.
Yeah.
But I'll certainly go with you can discern things by deduction and by testimony. and
Reasoning,
by
exactly. Yeah.
reasoning.
Like,
Yeah, I'd go with that.
does China exist?
Yeah, I mean,
Have you been China?
I see. I have actually. But
Oh, you've been
yeah,
to- okay.
Yeah.
Does-
Australia? I've never been to Australia.
Not exactly, but we believe it exists.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But it's not based on empirical data; it's based on testimony.
Yes.
You say I've seen. You may say I've seen a map. There's
Yeah.
Australia.
Yeah.
There's the landmass. That's Australia. But
Yeah.
that's just going off the testimony of the guy that put the map together.
Yeah.
That this is Australia, right? So there are other routes to knowledge. Okay, good. So when it comes to God's existence, what we say is that God has given us ample signs within the world, within ourselves.
Yeah.
He has given us tools to analyze and assess those signs that will lead us to Him, if we're honest and sincere, right? Now, at the same time, God is not going to spoon feed us, right? Because it defeats the purpose of this life, right? So let me just clarify the point before you come back on it. So, for example, you know when some people say, "Oh, why doesn't God come in front of me?" Right? It would defeat the purpose of this life. Because remember, I'm a Muslim, so I'm talking to you from an Islamic perspective. From our paradigm, this life is a test. God created us to test of us as to which of us are best in deeds. He created us for the only reason to worship Him. He created us for no other reason except to worship Him. Right? Therefore, one of the crucial elements of this test is, can the human being that's been endowed with some very amazing faculties and abilities, can the human being use those faculties and abilities to come to the conclusion that I exist? Can he find me first and foremost, right? So God is not going to therefore spoon feed you and say, oh, here I am, or here's the angels. Therefore the test is over, right?
Well, that's really adding in a new bit to it, isn't it? See, this is the bit I find difficult, because on the one hand, God wants to be known and is angry if we don't recognize it. But at the same time, he kind of hides and makes it a riddle.
No, so here's the balance between the two. Just because he's not going to spoon feed you from an empirical perspective, right, doesn't mean he's not giving us ample reasons and signs and evidences, right? That's what I'm going to get to now, right? So I'm just trying to get us to that point. So when it comes to, fine, I appreciate that there's other routes to knowledge other than science and empiricism. And I wanted to really clarify that, because a lot of atheists unfortunately fall into this trap. They're like, oh, where's the empirical data? Where's the physical proof? Right? And they already short circuit, they stab themselves in the foot by doing that and cut themselves off potential, them potentially finding God, right? So when it comes to the evidences and proofs, first and foremost, we believe as Muslims, there are, like we said, there's other routes to knowledge. One of the routes to knowledge, one type of knowledge is the type of knowledge God has embedded within every single human soul, which is a part of the fitrah, which is human nature, right? God has already put within every single human being his knowledge that he exists, right? That's there, right? Now I know this, Andy, this may come as a bit of a, because we've been conditioned to thinking that, the only way to understand things is by observing and reasoning and coming to a conclusion. I don't accept the fact that there is innate knowledge, right? Or intuitive knowledge, whatever you want to call it, but it's there. That's what God tells us, right? You don't have to agree with that. I'm just telling you our paradigm, right? Okay? So that's there. Now God, on top of this, he gives us revelation and he gives us signs which conform and confirm that truth which is already within, right? So when I share some reasons with you now, right, what I want you to appreciate, Andy, is that those reasons and arguments I share with you, they are simply there to try and awaken and trigger that truth that's already within you, right? Not to be a truth in and of themselves, and that are going to convince you God exists. So you're not a blank slate, as the world would have us believe, right? There is knowledge within you which may be dormant, but what I share with you and the reasons I give you could potentially, if God wills, trigger that truth that's within you.
I mean, I would have to come back to this idea that I have this fitra, as you say. You see, this is, again, I'm doing this empiricism thing. To say I've got fitra, can you show, obviously you can't do an ultrasound and show me my
you can't do an ultrasound for many things, like you're conscious,
yes,
Andy, right?
Yes,
you're a conscious human being, you're a self, the I. You're Andy. When you refer to yourself as an I, right? Your conscious experience cannot be validated in a test. You can't measure it in a test tube.
This is what I mean, indeed, but it's you have consciousness, and I'm aware that I'm conscious, and when I speak to everyone else, they have the same consciousness.
Sure, but
but this fitra, I'm not aware of it. It seems that people are raised in a religious background and more of it than people that don't. Did you know what I mean?
So what happens? Let me clarify that for you. What happens with the fitra? Is it's not that people have more or less awareness of it. What happens is it can become covered or clouded, right? Depending on our environment, our society, our upbringing, our friends, our whatever information comes in and out of our system.
But you do understand, you're just positing this. You may believe it, you may be right, but you don't have any. This is what I'm trying to say.
There is supporting data for this. There was, and I didn't want to, but I am just to satisfy you, because I know you're still thinking down those lines of empiricism. There is supporting data that's coming forward which suggests, and I'm saying supporting, I'm being very careful with my word choice, which suggests that children, human beings, are hardwired to believe in a creator, of course. Right? Justin O'Barrett, Born Believers, as a reference for you, read the book, study it. Olivera Petrovich, she's an atheist as far as I know. She's written on, as far as I know, she studies the psychology of children. And she's written on the belief of children. And she's shown that children naturally and rapidly develop the belief in a cause, a creator, right? It's something hardwired within the human being, right? But that's a side topic, right? Let me just now give you some reasons, right? Because the reason I mentioned the fitrah to you, not was to establish it or prove it to you. The reason I mentioned it to you was to highlight to you two things. Number one, that in the Islamic tradition, we don't believe in God based on just an arbitrary argument in and of itself. We have innate knowledge which is confirmed by other reasons, which fits like two pieces of the puzzle with other things like reason, rationality, science, X, Y, and Z. And secondly, when I give you some reasons, I want you to just sincerely see if they make sense to you, and if they may trigger something within you, right? Now, when it comes to reasons, there's many, right? I can share one, if you like, argument with you, right? It's a rational argument, it's a metaphysical argument, right? Metaphysical argument meaning it's It's not empirical.
Yeah.
It's not based on empiricism, right? So the argument is as follows. Everything within the universe, including the universe, is dependent. Right? Let me just give you the summary and then I'll break it down. Everything within the universe, including the universe, is dependent. Therefore, it must be dependent upon something. Right? Now, if you say, you can claim that it's dependent on something else dependent, but then if you say that, then you can ask, well, what is that dependent thing dependent upon? And then what is that dependent thing dependent upon? And you can go on forever and you run into the problem of the infinite regress, right? You won't get anywhere, right? Therefore, what the universe is dependent on, it makes sense that that thing is necessary and eternal. And that's who we call as God. Now let me break this down for you. I know it may be a bit of a...
No, I feel like I know the argument.
Okay.
I mean, the bits I don't agree are the universe is dependent. Well, we don't actually know that.
So
maybe it just exists.
Yeah, so let me break it down for you, right?
Yeah.
Let me define what I mean by dependent.
Yeah.
It's important to define terms because otherwise you can get away with anything, right? When I say dependent, something dependent, first and foremost, and we have to really pay attention, Andy, right? Because it's important to understand.
Yeah.
First and foremost, a dependent thing is something that's not necessary, right? A necessary thing is something that it's impossible for that thing not to exist, right? A necessary thing will be something that is impossible for it not to exist. So a necessary thing is necessarily has to exist, right? The opposite of that is something that's dependent, right? So for example, let me give you an example.
Yeah.
My watch is dependent, it's not necessary, meaning it didn't have to exist. Your hat is dependent, it didn't have to exist.
Well, how are you defining that? Because the watch didn't have a choice. If someone makes the watch, the watch has to exist.
If that someone didn't want to make the watch, it didn't have to exist.
Yeah,
see?
but are you saying, no, but what you're saying is that, I mean, a thing like a river, that exists. It was necessary that it existed. If all the rain didn't fall.
Sure, but it didn't. So if the rain didn't fall, it wouldn't have to.
What I suppose I'm trying to say is, if you live in a universe where A causes B, if I kick a football, it's necessary for the football to move.
Once you kicked it,
yes.
But the football in and of itself didn't have to exist, right?
Well,
because it just didn't have to exist.
But isn't there a flaw there? Because you're saying that there's sort of free will in the universe.
I'm not saying that. It's nothing to do with free will.
What
I'm saying is, when we look at something that's dependent, it doesn't have to exist.
Yes, but
there's nothing necessary about its existence, that's what I'm saying, right? So for example, the shirt you're wearing, there's nothing necessary about its existence.
Well, only if you believe in free will, so it could be possible that
I don't understand the point you're making with.
Well, I mean, if you believe,
so it's
in a kind of clockwork universe, everything that's going to happen will necessarily happen.
Not necessarily, no. So what you're saying is, when you're referring to the free will, I think you're referring to the one that produced the shirt.
Yes. Yeah.
So again, so what you're saying, in other words, you're saying the shirt is dependent because it depends upon the person that produces it.
Yes, but you're doing this necessary and dependent, and I don't
let me do this.
think it
let me give you all the points, and then they'll clarify.
Right, okay.
So first thing is that a dependent thing is something that doesn't necessarily have to exist, right? The second point is that a dependent thing has limited physical qualities. Right? So for example, this watch again, it has a certain shape, a certain dimension. It has a certain size band, X, Y. Your shirt has a certain volume, X, Y, and Z, right? Your backpack has a certain weight, so it has limited physical qualities. The third point I want to make is that its fundamental building blocks, its base parts could be arranged in different ways. A dependent thing has base parts which could be arranged in different ways. Right? So again, these buttons could be here, the dial could be here, X, Y, and Z, right? Your hat, the tip of it could be on that side. So a dependent thing has limited physical qualities, its fundamental building blocks can be arranged in different ways, right? And therefore, we can ask the question, well, why is the watch arranged in this way and not in any other way? Because this watch could have been arranged in 101 different ways, right?
I think a problem,
do you understand what I'm saying so far? Before you give me the problem, do you understand the point, what I'm saying?
Yes, I am, but I think I'm giving you counter-arguments, so you can give me the response to the counter-argument. You're saying it's built of building blocks. If there are fundamental building blocks, then they can't be built out of building blocks, can they? So if there's, say there's a fundamental part, just say there was, or even this, if there's the fundamental building blocks aren't built out of building blocks, so they're not dependent.
I don't understand what you're saying.
You said that one of the qualities of a dependent thing.
It's fundamental
was that
building blocks can be arranged in different ways.
Yes,
Yeah.
but a fundamental building block, one fundamental building block, can't be arranged in any other way.
No, but that's dependent too, because it has
Okay,
limited
but
physical qualities.
Yes, but there is a philosophical argument there, or a logical flaw. Surely you're saying it's a quality of dependent things that their building blocks could be arranged in
different
another
ways.
way.
Yes.
But a building block by itself can't be arranged in any other way.
Well, this thing here.
No, but you're going right down to whatever you want to call it, a string or a quark or whatever.
Yeah.
So that can't be any other way.
Well, they are arranged in different ways. So an atom itself could be arranged in 101 different ways. Its components.
Well, but
And as far as we know,
if
each
it
thing
did
could be.
a thing that doesn't have any components, that's what I'm saying.
But is it
probably
is it still physical?
it's still physical, but it couldn't
Has
be
it got-
arranged
has
in
it got-
any other
okay.
way.
Has-
That's the kind
has
of the
it-
definition
sure.
of a fundamental building.
We're splitting the definition. What I'm saying is take it as a whole, right?
Well,
When you take
okay.
the physical, so you take, say, a physical part here, right?
Yes.
You can break this down into parts.
Yeah.
And that could be arranged in a different way.
Yeah.
Take those smaller parts, they could be broken into smaller parts
Yes.
and arranged in a different way.
Yes.
They still have, even if you go down to the most...
Sir,
yeah.
until you get to the very smallest building
Yes.
block, and then that process stops. The smallest thing can't be
is the
rearranged.
smallest thing still have limited physical qualities? Because it has still got limited physical qualities.
No, it has limited physical qualities. Yeah,
Yes.
you could say that. I think a quark can be defined
Okay,
by
fine.
about
So let's
6
say,
things.
for the sake of argument, the quark's the
Okay,
smallest thing.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
that I feel I saw a small logical flaw. Doesn't disprove God or anything, but just.
I know what you're saying, but,
do you know
but
what I
I
mean?
think what you're doing is...
I enjoy
Sure.
discussing.
No. So what you're saying is we go right down to the most base particle.
Yes.
Right? Say it's a quark, for
Yes,
example.
yes. Wait, say it was. It's
So here's a question,
Yeah.
Andy. Say that's the quark
yeah.
magnified a trillion times,
Yes.
right? That quark,
Yeah.
right? Number one, has it got limited physical qualities? Yes.
Yes.
Right?
Let's say yes.
Can that be split? Yes.
No. Well, no.
You can still split it.
Well, no. That's the whole point. That's the point of
You can keep
fundamental
splitting. You
building blocks.
if it's material, you can keep splitting.
Oh, I don't. I mean, we'd have to get
Technically-
physicists in, but basically, just logically, if you believe that there's a fundamental particle, by definition, it couldn't be split. If it could be split, it's not
as far-
fundamental. I mean, that's just logic. Think about it. 'Cause I think that's a good point.
So what you're saying, if it's a fundamental particle,
It can't be split.
so you're saying go to the base. But if I would say if it's still physical,
Yeah.
it has limited physical qualities,
Yes.
meaning that it has a certain structure. If it's got limited physical qualities, it still does. Because otherwise you'll be saying that, well, it's not physical anymore.
No, I think I'm not sure
Is
what
it
you
still
mean by
okay?
physical.
So say you go to the
but-
most basic particle.
Yes. Yeah.
Is it still physical? Has it got limited physical qualities?
I would. Well, I'll come back to that, but yes. Let's
Yes.
say
Okay.
yes.
So if it has limited physical qualities,
Yes.
therefore it has some sort of structure there, right?
No.
If you're saying there's no structure, then you're saying, well, it's just nothing.
No, but it's
Is it
just
something?
one thing, but it doesn't have components, that's what I'm saying. If it has components, it's not a
But
fundamental
what I would
particle.
say is, as far as we know,
Yeah.
they keeps going down smaller and smaller and smaller, right?
Yes, but-
the smallest particle, you could still technically, if it's material and has limited physical qualities, you can still split it. It can still be split.
I mean, again, I don't think that's right.
Let's park-
logically,
let's
that-
park- should
yeah,
we park it?
logically, I don't think it's right, and I think even get physicists in, they don't know.
It'll probably go
they
beyond
don't-
what they
yes,
want.
yeah. But if you got down to say a string,
Yeah.
the whole point of a string is, you can't cut it in half.
A string. That's a
I'm
string.
talking
Has it
about
got
string
a string?
theory, which
Okay.
I don't understand.
Has
I
a string
should
got
say.
structure? It's a string.
Yes, it has
right?
a structure.
It's got limited physical qualities.
Yes, yeah.
Therefore, if it has limited physical qualities, you can still break it down.
I don't think that's right, but we're
It's a
sort of
structure.
stuck.
But let's come back up a
Yeah,
bit,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Just so we don't lose the whole point.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So a dependent thing, we can at
Yeah.
least say has limited physical qualities, right?
Yes, and well, okay, yeah.
Yeah. And let's keep it on a surface level, right?
Yes, yeah.
And its components, let's not say fundamental components, let's just define it a bit better,
Yeah.
clearer. Its,
maybe drop that
its
down.
components, right, can be arranged in a different way.
Okay.
Would that-
but
would you be happy with that?
No, I would. The bit about the components just seems to have a flaw. That there seems to be a big logical flaw because a thing, the most fundamental thing, doesn't have components. that's just
So what is it?
logic.
Okay, when you
That's just an example
okay.
of this is what I was saying about
Yeah.
empiricism.
Yeah.
You've actually proved me wrong,
Yeah.
because what I'm saying is just deductively, kind of a priori, if you follow.
Yeah.
The most fundamental thing doesn't have components. It's like a married bachelor.
No. I think the analogy is wrong, because when you're saying the most fundamental thing, what are you referring to? Are you referring to something physical?
Yes. Some
So,
kind of
so
particle.
okay, good. Exactly.
Yeah.
So if it's physical and has limited physical qualities,
Yeah.
that means it has some physical qualities. It has a certain shape and structure, right?
Well, I mean, it shapes the wrong word. It would have a
Well, if it's
spin
material
of
and
1
physical-
or minus 1.
What is it? What is it?
Well, this is a big question.
Okay,
What,
so
we don't know.
let's not go. Let's come up a bit,
Right,
right?
okay, yeah.
So let's take if you're driving down a high street,
Yeah.
road,
Yeah.
and you look over onto the hillside,
Yeah.
and there are some flowers arranged in a particular shape.
Yeah.
Right. You know they're dependent. Why? Because they're arranged in a certain order.
Yes,
They have
yeah.
limited physical qualities, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing necessary about their existence. They didn't have to exist. They could have been arranged in a different way. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but again, well, just to be clear,
Yeah.
when you say it's dependent, if you saw they weren't arranged in the properly, they were just randomly, it's a wild meadow.
They're still dependent.
You feel they're dependent. What are they dependent
Say there was
on?
a wild-
not a human choice.
So, okay, so say there's a wild arrangement of flowers.
Yeah.
They are still dependent. I'll tell you why. Because they didn't have to be the way they're arranged, even in the randomness, right? They have limited physical qualities though.
Yes.
Those flowers could be arranged as a sum. If you break them down to individual flowers, they could be arranged in different ways. They could have been arranged in 1,000,001 other ways, right? And if they could be arranged in 1,000,001 other ways, the question is why have they ended up in this particular arrangement?
Yes.
You can say weather conditions is dependent on weather conditions, is dependent upon the way the farmer scattered the seeds, X, Y, and Z.
yes.
But the point is they're dependent, right?
Yes. I mean, I think that there's a philosophical point there, but like I say, if you're a determinist,
Yeah.
you know what that means.
Yes.
Like, you think that everything that happens
Is determined by
yes,
prior causes.
is from now. A thing that's happening in
Yeah.
1,000,000 years is bound to happen.
That's fine. Even
and
then,
that seems to me to be. You're saying necessary and dependent as two different things.
No, yes.
It seems to me, if you're a determinist, everything is necessary. And when you say
Yeah,
it could have been different,
no. So
I mean,
remember how I define necessary. Something necessary,
Yeah.
right? It's impossible for it not to have existed, a particular thing, right?
okay.
That's why it's necessary,
Okay,
right?
well,
So
I'll
here's the
take
thing,
that as
Andy.
a
Okay, so here's the
definition.
thing. Even if you take the determinist type of outlook, right? And you say this thing here
Yeah.
is determined on prior causes.
Yeah.
It's dependent on prior causes. It's dependent on what came before it.
Yes,
right?
but all the way back
To what?
well, say it went all the way back to some kind of, I think they call it a necessary existence.
Exactly.
But if that's necessary and everything after that is necessary, we
No,
could live
we
in
don't
a
say
universe.
that. See, I'm not saying that.
Oh no, I don't know if I would say that,
Yeah.
but you just see that you enjoy the argument
What
in
you-
itself.
so-
You could have a universe where there was every single thing in that universe is necessary. Do you see
How
what
does
I
that
mean?
make sense?
Well, just the first thing was necessary. I think you would say
Can you
that.
give me- okay,
So
well,
it couldn't be any other
there-
way.
but the point-
say it was a god.
Yeah.
The god, and it couldn't be any
But God
other
is not
god.
part of the universe. So there's nothing necessary within the physical material world. That's the whole point. There's
But
nothing necessary in the physical universe.
But if the god himself was predetermined, if he was born, if he was created,
Yes.
or if he exists,
Yes.
and he only has
But then,
one idea.
but then that God is not necessary. I'll tell you why.
Okay,
If you say God has a beginning,
yeah,
straight away automatically
Yes.
this God that you
Yes,
mentioned
yes.
is not necessary because
Yes.
it's dependent upon something
I
bringing it to
agree.
existence.
So let's start
right?
with the top.
Okay.
What I
good.
meant was this eternal God. If it's his nature
Yeah.
that he's going to create one universe only, and it's going to be the deterministic universe. Yeah, you don't have to agree with that, but if that was the case,
But that
It
doesn't
would
logically
be
follow everything is
necessary.
necessary now. How does that mean everything is necessary? That all that means is everything that comes into being is
Yeah.
dependent upon something prior to it. Fully dependent upon something prior to it. That's what you're saying. It's still dependent. The universe is full of, what you're saying is there's a dependent chain of causes going all the way back to a necessary
yes,
cause.
the only thing is when you define dependent, that's fine if you depend.
Do you see what I'm saying,
No,
Andy?
yes, I do.
Yeah.
But you were giving a different definition. If dependent is there had to be A in order for there to be B, that's great. But what you're saying is, given A, there could be B or C. There's kind of choice in there.
Whatever B, C, D is, what I'm saying is that everything, therefore, is dependent in its own way. B, C, D, or X, or Y, or Z, whatever it is.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is everything dependent,
Yeah.
which the sum of the universe is,
Yeah.
has to make sense that it depends upon something necessary and eternal. Otherwise, you run into the problem of the infinite regress. Right? There has to be a necessary, independent, eternal cause. If you say this cause is not eternal, then you're saying then automatically by default this cause is also dependent. Why? Because we clarified, if it comes into existence, therefore it's dependent upon something external to itself, right?
Yes.
Therefore, so the simple argument, the logic follows, rationally makes sense that the universe and the sum of the universe, which is all dependent, depends upon something necessary and eternal. You don't have to say it's God at the moment, right?
Yeah.
But at least we come to the conclusion that it depends upon something necessary and eternal. Does that make sense?
No, I know the argument, yes.
Would you agree with
yes.
that?
I mean, it seems like that would make sense that, yes, there has to be something that just is, infinite.
Okay, Sandy, here's the
there
thing.
are ways around infinite regress, but I find them a bit complicated. So let's just go with there has to be something.
There are no ways around the infinite regress except for the infinite regress. For example, the infinite regress is an infinite regress, right? Meaning there is no way back from it.
Unless it goes round in a circle.
But then it's not infinite. Because an infinite chain means an infinite, never-ending chain.
Yes. No, but it doesn't have to be infinite if it's a circle.
Well, then it's not infinite.
No, I'm not saying it is infinite. But that's how you get out of it being infinite.
But then it's
It's not infinite.
But then it's
a
circular.
circle.
Then it's self-creation. It doesn't make any sense again. That's another absurdity.
Well, yes, but maybe the universe is absurd. I agree that they're difficult.
So here's what I'm saying, Andy. Why?
Yeah,
why?
we were talking about
So
But
So
I would be quite
Andy,
happy
here's the
to-
thing,
all
Andy,
right.
quickly, just a point. Why choose absurdities over a rational conclusion, which is a eternal, necessary, independent cause?
Yes, I would go with that, although I just want to leave a marker to say we're kind of thinking whatever the explanation of the universe is, it's something kind of within our mental compass that's familiar to us.
No, I would say the opposite.
I would say
the opposite. You know why?
Yeah.
Because as soon
Because
as
you were saying it couldn't be an absurdity, and the definition of an absurdity is something we don't encounter. we
Andy,
never
if we get into
encounter.
definitions, we'll be here till the cows come home. Right? We won't get anywhere.
I like that kind of
Okay,
stuff.
but just
Okay, keep
we're
going.
following so far,
Yeah.
right? So here's what I'm saying, Andy.
Yeah,
Is that the most rational conclusion is
yeah.
that the universe, the sum of the universe, and everything that exists, which is dependent, depends upon something necessary and eternal.
Okay,
Right?
let's go with that.
Yeah. So you can agree to that, Andy. Right?
Yeah, for argument's
Now,
sake.
here's what's interesting. And by the way, Andy, let's try to move beyond for argument's sake if we can. Because I know we enjoy this whole, human beings enjoy having a bit of a
Yes,
rational
yeah.
discourse and a bit of
Yes.
philosophical discussion here and there.
Yes.
But let's just see if we can really benefit from this as well, right? Because meaning, if it leads us to a conclusion, why not accept that conclusion?
But there's a difference.
So here's the
between
choice
us.
you have.
You want to have this conclusion, and it's not that I don't want to have this conclusion. It's just I'm aware that we're cutting off different avenues. I'm
Sure.
aware of
Okay,
that,
so I'll tell you-
and that's why I don't feel comfortable.
Okay, let me cut.
being a
I'll
deist,
tell you
I
why
suppose.
I'll tell you why
Yeah.
empiricism is cut off as an avenue.
Yes.
I'll tell you why. When you talk about a necessary reality,
Yes.
right? It has to be something independent and something that does not have limited physical qualities, because we define dependent things that have limited physical qualities. You see?
Yes, but
So a
but
necessary-
I don't agree with that part either.
Okay, no,
that's what I said.
but you agreed initially as to dependent things have limited physical qualities. That's one point you did agree with.
Well, what you said, you pointed to your watch and said this has limited physical quality. So everything that we see in the universe,
Yes.
you could say
It's
has,
Has finite limited physical qualities.
Yes, but it doesn't mean. And again, I'm not being difficult, but you can't say just because there's two things that being dependent necessarily makes it finite, or that finite things by definition have to be dependent.
Okay.
It could be that all
Sure.
the things in the universe.
Let me correct that point. I get what you're
Are
saying.
dependent
So
on
no,
what-
you can have potentially.
Yeah.
You can have an eternal thing
Yes.
which is dependent, logically speaking, right? You can have an eternal.
Say that again,
You can have an
please.
eternal thing which is dependent, right?
And you're right. Okay.
Because some people may argue, well, the universe is eternal, but it's still dependent because it has limited physical qualities, and it still requires an explanation outside of itself, right? It still requires an explanation, even if you argue the universe is eternal, right? Do you see? But the point I'm trying to clarify here for you, Andy, is a necessary thing is opposite to a dependent thing. You would agree to that point, at least.
You say a necessary thing is opposite to a dependent thing.
As far as the definition is concerned. So a necessary thing necessarily has to exist. A dependent thing doesn't have to exist. It didn't have to exist.
Can't we just say there's a dependent thing and a non-dependent thing? I'm not sure why you go necessary.
If it's not dependent,
yes,
I would say it's necessary. Because if it's not dependent, it's independent.
Okay, if you're using the word necessary to mean non-dependent.
So look, if something is independent, means it's free of need, free of dependency, right?
Yes.
From every way, shape or form,
yes,
right? Therefore, that thing has to be necessary because there's no other way for it to be. It's just it's impossible for you to claim that a necessary thing or an independent thing is not necessary. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking, it seems to me
Let's go back to that.
It would be better just to split the two properties, non-dependent. We can all understand that. This thing, A causes B, A is, but A wasn't caused by anything. A is non-dependent. So that's dependent, non-dependent.
Yeah.
But what you're going is a little bit further in saying that A has to exist. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, not necessarily.
Okay, so
there could be, I know this is a bit Irish, but there could be a universe in which there isn't a universe, if you know what I mean.
Okay, if I'm calling A, which is necessary,
just
if it was possible for it not to exist,
yes,
how would that be independent?
How would that be non-dependent or dependent?
How would it be independent, even independent from that perspective?
We're doing dependent and non-dependent.
Okay, let's make it easier. Let's go back to
How would the thing, the letter A, the number, the alpha thing that starts everything. That's non-dependent because there's nothing before it to cause it.
So it's eternal, therefore.
That brings in ideas of time, which is
So if you say it began. A began, came into being.
It didn't have to come into being.
So therefore it's eternal.
Exists. Okay.
Eternal meaning
if you want, yes,
just exists, yeah?
Yes, yes.
And if it just exists, therefore it's necessary.
You're saying therefore, and I'm not being awkward, but I don't think there's any therefore there.
If it's eternal.
For instance, we could imagine that there's lots of universes, and maybe there's lots of gods, and they all have their own universe. How do you know that each god had to exist? Who determines that they have to exist?
We'll get to that. That's a separate topic.
Well, I don't think it is. I don't agree. I'm afraid. Don't think. I'll maybe think about it later, but I don't think I'm being stubborn. Being non-dependent doesn't mean you have to exist unless you can come up with an argument.
Let's work through this. So you're saying being non-dependent means
just you're not dependent. There's nothing before you. That's probably like the easiest way to put it.
But how does something being just eternal? Right?
Yes,
so look, you're saying a non-dependent thing is eternal. I would agree to that.
Yes.
Okay, but you're refusing to accept that it's necessary.
Yes.
Why are you refusing to accept that it's necessary?
Because it doesn't seem to follow. And just in my head,
why?
I mean,
I want to understand what you're thinking.
Yes. I mean, like, say we say there's a God to make it easier. There's a God and He creates the universe. I mean, there could be not a God, if you're following me. There could be a universe when there wasn't a God. How do we know that there had to be that God? Couldn't there be? If there's nothing causing? Yes, I think this is the point. If it's non-dependent, there's nothing causing it. So this is what I'm trying to say.
Therefore, it exists in and of itself.
The universe has to exist. The universe, I would say, is necessary. God is just a possibility.
But now we're going against what we defined and agreed with. The universe has physical qualities. It's physical, limited physical qualities. But now you're changing the whole discussion. You're saying, well, no. Now I'm going to say the universe is independent and necessary. How will you come to that conclusion?
Yes, I think this is how you. Well, if you say God exists.
Andy, you agree that the universe is dependent?
Yes.
It's dependent on something outside of itself, and we also agreed and acknowledged that this cause must be independent, right? At least independent, eternal, right? The only problem you were having was saying it's necessary, accepting it's necessary, right?
Yes.
My
that
point
is
was,
but-
if it exists in and of itself,
Yeah.
it's not dependent upon anything
Yes.
outside of itself.
Yeah.
Therefore, it necessary, and it's eternal.
Yes.
It's always existed.
Yes.
Therefore, I would say it's necessary.
Well, if that's your definition, I mean, if you want to say anything that's non-dependent is necessary, I mean, we can go
Either
with
way,
that, but it
okay.
doesn't
So,
seem...
Andy, let's do this.
Yes.
Let's just toe the line here for now.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Let's say it's independent, eternal,
Yeah.
Right?
Independent.
eternal.
Yeah.
Fine, let's stick with that for
Yeah,
now. Okay. So at least we've come to the point where the universe and its entire sum is
Yeah.
dependent upon something independent and eternal.
Now,
Let's park necessary.
Right, I'm really sorry about this, but I'm going to have to say the non-dependent thing could be the universe itself. No one had, this is a big mistake people make just by thinking that, well, the universe exists, therefore someone had to make it. I think that, again, is definitely a
Okay.
flaw.
So what you're arguing now, you're
Yes,
changing your
yes.
position. Because you did originally agree that the universe is dependent. Because there's limited physical qualities as we defined, and you agreed to. Its components could be arranged in different ways.
I'm afraid I've been disagreeing really. I mean, at some points I've been saying for the sake of argument so that you can make your
Andy,
argument.
this is the thing. So guys, this is what I don't like to do just for the sake of argument.
All right, okay.
The point, we need to understand this point.
Okay.
Does the universe
Yeah.
have limited physical qualities?
I-
Yes,
Right,
the answer is
okay.
yes or no. Is the universe physical and is it limited?
Well, okay, I'm going to give you another argument, and again, sorry
You're
to
not
be
answering my
awkward.
question.
All right.
If you answer my
Well,
question,
my
then-
question is, it depends. There's a problem there because what do you mean by quality? Like a quality could be like your watch. You were saying had limited physical.
Okay, has it got
I could say
A quality-
your watch.
Yeah.
One of the variables that describes your watch is how likely is it to appear in an episode of Game of Thrones. I've been watching Game of Thrones, so that would be a variable. So it wouldn't be.
That's a
your
different-
hat would be quite likely to appear.
No, but Andy,
so,
you're missing
so
the point.
that would be a quality.
No.
And
Okay.
there would
let
be
me,
an infinite
let me
number of
define what
qualities for every
when I say
single thing.
when I say the watch has limited physical qualities.
Yes.
What I'm saying is as a certain structure, a certain shape,
Yes.
occupies a certain space.
Yes.
Yeah, it has a certain different parts or shapes that come together and
Yes,
make
yes.
it. This is what I mean by limited physical qualities.
I do see how.
Now
it's-
let's
okay.
apply that to the universe.
Yeah.
Does the universe have limited physical qualities?
Yes,
It does.
Same way. Yeah.
Therefore,
Unless it's infinite, I don't think it is.
therefore, based on only that means the universe is dependent upon something that gave it those limited physical qualities.
Yes.
Do you see the point, Andy?
I absolutely see your point.
So then
but-
how can you therefore say now that the universe is eternal or independent?
But I think this is just a wrong argument. I'm sorry, but you're saying that a thing that's finite has to be dependent. Again, it's one of these axioms that you're just laying down. It doesn't seem to follow logically from anything. For instance, say the universe was infinite, but I don't think it is, but say it was. Does that mean it's
mean
not
eternal?
dependent? Well, no, it might be infinitely big.
No, so let's take that for example.
Yeah.
Say the universe is eternal. As the-
Infinitely big.
Well, that,
Because then it would have infinite qualities.
yeah, but we don't say
But say it was.
yeah.
Does that mean that it's dependent or
But Andy,
non-dependent?
if we're gonna go by potentials, we're not gonna go anywhere.
Well,
Say this was that and that. It's like saying it's like Andy. We're getting to the point. It's like saying, well, I'm saying you think I'm a human being, but I'm actually a gorilla in a human suit. Say that's the case.
No.
We're talking about
You're
potentials
laying
now.
down an axiom
Yeah.
about something that we don't know. We can't go and study. We don't have lots of universities.
No,
if you had lots of universities,
Okay,
we can
Andy,
go and check.
why can't we
But
study-
you're making an
Andy,
axiom.
listen,
a
Andy.
thing that has limited qualities must be dependent.
Andy, is the uni-
And I
okay,
don't,
Andy,
and my
can't-
question is, if it had infinite qualities, would it be dependent or
Andy, you're
non-dependent?
missing the point.
Okay.
Can we study the universe?
We can.
Yeah,
that's all.
through science.
Yeah.
That means the universe is a physical reality.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah?
go
Yes.
along with that. Yeah.
Okay. Now, when it comes to the physical,
Yeah.
physical things have physical qualities. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Physical qualities have limits. So everything physical that we know of has limited physical qualities, right? Meaning certain shape occupies a certain space,
Yes.
has certain dimensions X, Y, and Z.
Yes. Yeah.
The universe has these qualities too,
Yes.
right? Therefore, the universe is dependent upon.
No, it's not their fault.
Right, and you know,
You can't say that a thing. You're saying that anything that's finite is dependent. Well, that, you know, I can.
I'm
that's
not
just
saying
an
that. I
axiom.
didn't say that.
Oh, all right, sorry.
I
what are you
said
saying?
anything that has limited physical qualities. Right?
Limited, yeah.
So look, let's go to.
Finite-
Okay, look.
just say
I'm gonna try
finite
to explain this a bit
qualities,
clearer, right? The watch,
Yeah.
this watch, has limited physical qualities, meaning
Yeah.
it's occupying a certain space. It has certain dimensions, right?
Yes.
It has, you know, a certain length bracelet. All of these things are its limited physical qualities. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Just listen to me.
Yeah.
Therefore, we know that someone made this watch with these particular limited physical qualities, right? This watch could have had other limited physical qualities. It didn't have to have these qualities. It could have had other. It could have been arranged in a different way, right? The same applies to the universe. If it has limited physical qualities, it means that it could have been arranged in a different way, right? If it could have been arranged in a different way, that means that something external to itself arranged it in the particular way we find it. It logically follows what I'm saying.
I would say that.
Well, look, let's conclude on that, Andy. Maybe have a think about
Yes,
it.
yes,
yeah?
I'll have a
Maybe
think.
we'll catch
I've
up
got
on this.
another point, because it just popped into my head, I want to say, you're actually proving that there must be fundamental particles, because you could say that watch is different from another watch because it has different atoms, and you go right down to the fundamental thing. If each fundamental building block can be split into further fundamental building blocks, and each of those have a finite number of qualities, if you can split it down ad infinitum, then every single object has infinite qualities. Do you follow that? I think that's quite a good argument.
Say that again?
Right. The watch is made up of particles.
Yes.
Each particle has finite qualities, you would say. But you also said that these fundamental particles could be split into smaller particles.
Potentially.
And then into smaller, and then
Potentially.
into smaller. But if that was so, you would carry on splitting ad infinitum, so there would be and each infinitesimal part would have a number of finite qualities, which means that the watch as a whole has an infinite number of qualities.
I think
I mean,
I think what you're conflating there is you're conflating the potential infinite with an actual infinite. So
Yes.
potentially,
Yes.
each part could be continue to be split,
Yes.
but what's being split is not infinite in and of itself.
Yes, no,
you
I
see?
agree, but it's just like
It's an interesting
yeah,
thought experiment.
The series of, you know.
But anyway, think about what I'm saying. We'll carry on for next time, right?
Okay.
Thanks, Andy.
I mean,
Have you read the Quran by any chance?
I have, yes,
You have?
yes.
Have you got a copy?
I think I've got it on my phone.
Because the point I was gonna make,
Yeah, go on.
obviously maybe next time when we discuss it,
Yes,
carry on
yeah.
with the point, is that
I would hope that you actually listen to that, because
Yeah.
I feel that I made. I mean, I'm not. I'll think about it, but I feel I wasn't just being stubborn. I think
that's why.
had
I was
real
listening to your
points.
point because that's why I addressed it. So about the
Yeah.
potential and actual infinite right now. I
Yes,
thought about
yes,
what you said, but what's interesting
Yes.
is the idea that the sum of dependent things is dependent on something independent
Yes,
and eternal.
yes,
It fits in line with the conception of God in Islam anyway.
yes.
Because in Islam, we don't have the concept of God, which is God is a man or became a man.
Yes, yeah.
This is God is an eternal cause, creator, that everything is dependent upon, and He is independent. So it's really in line with the Islamic tradition. It's very interesting from that perspective.
Yeah,
But Andy, they're waiting for you
Yes,
there.
yes, sorry.
We're gonna.
Okay, right.
Are you here regularly?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
maybe carry that.
Yes,
Have
yeah,
a think
I will,
about
yes,
the
I
qualities I
will,
mentioned.
I will, and I'll
Think
try-
about the definition of dependent things, right? And we'll discuss that further next time.
Okay, I could even,
Cheers, Andy.
Okay, yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
I think I could probably write it down better than
Yeah,
I can say.
write it down. Bring it again.
What's your name again?
Imran.
Imran, okay, very nice to meet you.
Bit of a handful there, bro. You want me to hold it for you?
Do you know anything?
No.
Could you take this? Do you know something? Okay. Shall I record this?
No, do this one first.
جزاك الله خير. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters.